Hey guys, this is your host Rabbit, and welcome to another Conquest of Azeroth 1-30 class showcase, today featuring the Runemaster. The Runemaster is a high utility magic damage dealer that uses cloth armor. They use runic and arcane magics and are highly complex and unique casters. They use mana and runes as resources. Spirit mages, which are Runemasters, use multiple schools of magic. They are very unique and play differently from traditional casters. Runes, portals, and ancient arcane magics are all aspects of a spirit mage's toolkit. Spirit mages are the rarest form of mages in the world. Mastering this domain takes more time and patience than most people can spare. This class has access to a very wide variety of control and utility effects, and is very complex and difficult to master. Spirit mages are constantly protected by a magical barrier that causes all damage they take to be dealt to their mana pool before their health pool. While they have a large amount of mana, the intense study required to learn this domain leaves many mages frail in their physical stature, leaving them vulnerable to attacks while their mana shield is down. When piloted by a master, the Spirit Mage's magics are some of the most destructive imaginable. The Runemaster is one of those really unique classes that I've seen a lot of, but I don't fully understand exactly how they work. I know they have a lot of teleports and a very wide variety of magics to choose from, so I'm pretty excited to get in and cover this 1-30 showcase. So thanks for watching, stick around, and let's get this knocked out. Alright, here we are in game, and we're going to quickly cover the abilities and passives that we get at level 1. The first ability we have access to is Rune Blast. Costs 9 mana, is a 2-second cast, 50-yard range on a 15-second cooldown. Fire a blast of runic magic at the target, dealing 24 to 29 arcane damage. Grants you Cosmic Impact, increasing your spell critical strike chance by 15% and spell haste by 10% for 10 seconds. This effect stacks up to 3 times. Although the tooltip doesn't say it, the Rune Blast ability is usable while moving. We also get access to Spell Wrath. It's a 30-yard range, 2.7 second cast with no cooldown. You blast a target enemy with magic, causing 2 to 2 arcane damage and restoring 1% of your maximum mana every 2 seconds for 10 seconds. The first passive we have access to is Mind Guard. Reduces your stamina by 80%. Every 20 seconds you will gain a shield that causes damage to be dealt to your mana pool instead of your health. This shield absorbs up to 10,030 damage and lasts until destroyed. I believe that absorption number is just a bit of a tooltip bug because we definitely don't have 10,000 health. Final passive we get access to is Rune Daggers. You wield ancient weapons of great power, enchanted with mystic runes that allow your magics to flow through them. Your auto attacks will deal arcane damage based on your intellect. Additionally, every 10 seconds you will switch between fire damage and increased frost damage. Also, one thing I wanted to quickly note, there is a specific reason why I decided to go Dwarf, and that's because the Dwarf has the access to the racial stone form, which we all know will remove poisons, bleeds, and diseases, and give us some extra armor and survivability. The reason why this ability is so good is because Runemasters have access to a stealth ability, and the Venomancer class has a poison that lasts for an entire minute. So if you ever get affected by it, you have to wait the full minute's duration before you can get a re-stealth. Going Dwarf and getting access to the stone form will give us an easy way to dispel that poison and get right back into stealth. The fact that the Runemaster's effective HP comes from their mana instead of their health is a real advantage, because most of the time it's a lot easier to stack very high amounts of mana than it is to stack high amounts of HP. This also allows Runemasters to be a strong counter for any class that drains HP, because their damage won't affect our health and it will instead affect our mana, so they will not gain the benefit of the HP drain. That's going to wrap up our level 1 abilities as well as our first impressions of the Runemaster. I'll be updating you guys every time we get a new ability, which is typically every 3 levels. Alright guys, we just hit level 4, and the ability we picked up is Primordial Blast. Blast the target with runic magic, dealing 21 to 24 arcane damage. Casting this ability will trigger a fire, frost, or arcane salvo on your target at random. Primordial Blast is a very unique ability because every time that we use it, we get a random 20-second debuff that can either be flame, frost, or arcane salvo. I'll post all of the tooltips for each of these abilities on the screen now. They essentially just augment our abilities to allow them to do additional damage, depending on what debuff is applied. Another thing worth mentioning is the salvo passive that comes from Primordial Blast doesn't just affect your primary target, but also any other targets next to it. So it does give us a little bit of access to some low-level cleave that other classes don't have. We just hit level 7 and we gained access to 2 abilities in the form of Conjure Runic Familiar and Displace Familiar. Conjure Runic Familiar is a 3.64 second cast, summons a Runic Familiar to assist you. This companion cannot attack and will not regenerate health passively, cannot be used in combat. Displace Familiar is a 7 mana, 40 yard range, 10 second cooldown instant cast. Your runic familiar warps to the target location where it will remain for 10 seconds. Upon warping, the familiar will unleash a burst of magic dealing 24 to 29 arcane damage to enemies around it. This ability does not share a cooldown with the other Displace Familiar spells. These abilities are interesting pickups. They're not going to do too much for us early on, but I know that they have some pretty good synergies with some of our later abilities. One really nice thing about the Runemaster early on is their durability. As you can see, I can just come in here and pull all of these mobs, get them all stacked up, get our Primordial Blast for some salvos going, and just sit here and cleave them all down. And as you can see, my mana bar, which is essentially my health bar, doesn't really go down too much due to our Spell Wrath passive that's regenerating our mana. Alright, we just hit level 8 and picked up the ability Field of Destruction. It is a buff that we put on our Runic Familiar, which causes it to emanate a Field of Destruction, causing enemies within 15 yards of it to suffer 5% increased magic damage taken. Lasts until cancelled, only one field spell can be active on your Runic Familiar at a time. Alright guys, we just hit level 10 and we picked up the ability Warp. It's an instant cast 14 second cooldown that warps us to the target location, and it gives us a stack of our Cosmic Impact buff. We just hit level 11 and we picked up the ability Aspect of Dominion. It's an instant cast ability that lasts until cancelled. It increases all threat you generate by 80% and gives you a 8% chance to reflect any harmful spells cast on you. You can only have one aspect active at a time. We just hit level 13 and the ability we picked up is Fireblade. It's an instant cast 1.5 second cooldown in melee range. It's an instant strike that causes 8 to 10 fire damage and generates 1 fire essence. The essence system is something that's used in the Riftblade tree that we're not really going to use too much until later on, but essentially what it is you generate these essences, and depending on the combination of essence that you have, it allows you to use certain abilities. Here's an example of an ability that we'll get later on. You can see that Pyrostrike deals 72 to 79 fire damage to the target, requires 3 fire essences. Alright guys, we just picked up our level 14 ability Nexus Dart. It's 19 mana, instant cast, 3 second cooldown. You blast the enemy for 21 to 23 arcane damage, generates 1 arcane essence. We just hit level 15 and we picked up 2 abilities. The first of the 2 abilities is Riftblade, an instant strike that causes 8 to 10 arcane damage. This ability cannot miss. Consumes your essences to perform an effect based on the combination. Refer to individual Lost Page passives for these combinations. With that, we also got Lost Page, Expel Flame. Expel Flame deals 15 to 19 fire damage to enemies within 10 yards, plus an additional 10 fire damage over 10 seconds. Requires 2 arcane essences and 1 fire essence. It looks like the Riftblade spec, which is what these abilities are under, is going to be the specialization that is really complex, because you're going to be weaving in all these abilities that are going to be generating you these essences and then consuming them with Riftblade. It really reminds me of the Invoker hero on Dota 2, with the fact that you're generating these essences and you can hold 3 of them, and depending on what 3 you have will determine what ability you use when you use Riftstrike. At level 16 we unlocked the Lost Page Pyrostrike. Pyrostrike deals 84 to 91 fire damage to the target, requires 3 fire essences. Our level 19 ability is Aspect of Arcana. Regenerates 3% of your maximum mana every 5 seconds. While active, Spell Wrath, Rune Blast, Primordial Blast, Unleash Runes, and your word spells will have a chance to stun the enemy target for 1.5 seconds. At level 22, we get access to Unleash Runes. 23 mana, instant cast, 30 second cooldown. Consume all of your inscribed runes and begin firing magic missiles at an enemy target every 0.25 seconds. Lasts at least 1 second, increased by half a second for each inscribed rune consumed. Grants 1 stack of Cosmic Impact when used. We also got Inscribe Rune, which is the ability that we use to replenish our rune supply. Alright guys, we just hit level 25, and the ability we got was that stealth I was talking to you about earlier in the form of Mana Shroud. You shroud your form in the arcane mist, turning you invisible. Lasts until cancelled, cannot be used in combat. Every 1 second while shrouded, you will gain a stack of Primordial energy, reducing the cast time of your next Primordial Blast by 20%, stacking up to 5 times. I wasn't aware of the passive cast time reduction that comes with Mana Shroud, so that's going to be a huge help. The stealth itself doesn't slow your movement speed at all, so you're going to be able to get around the battleground just as fast as you were before, aside from not being able to use your mount. And being able to just drop an instant cast Primordial Blast to get you set up for the kill is insanely good, because there's a lot of setup abilities that we have to do for this class, and eliminating the cast times on a couple of them is going to be a huge help in PvP. One more thing that I just realized with the Mana Shroud's passive, it not only decreases the cast time of your Primordial Blast, but it also reduces the cast time of your Spell Wrath ability. So that's really helpful because you can come out of stealth and apply both of your 2 buffing spells to immediately jump straight into combat. That's really nice because as soon as you exit combat, you get to apply both of your buffing abilities, which gives you a huge damage and eliminates a bunch of the downtime. Our level 26 ability is Warpdagger. It costs 60 energy and it's an instant cast that requires daggers and stealth. Instantly teleport behind an enemy target and strike them for 300% weapon damage as arcane. Can only be used during Mana Shroud, requires a dagger in the main hand. At level 28 we pick up 3 new abilities. Starting with Warplink, it's an instant cast 7-second cooldown. Mark your current location. After 6 seconds you are warped back to the marked spot. We also get Open Riftgate. Tears open a rift in space that will exist for 2 minutes. You can use the Riftgate to set your Hearthstone location or interact with it using other spells. Along with that we get Riftgate Transfer. You teleport to the nearest Riftgate. These 3 abilities just add some extra movement to our toolkit, which we don't necessarily need, but it's going to be nice to have either way. Our level 30 ability is Rune of Power. It's a 3-minute cooldown. Create a Rune of Power beneath you for 15 seconds, granting 40% increased spell haste and 20% increased magical damage dealt by all allies standing upon it. So that being said, now that we've covered all the abilities, I'm going to go ahead and roll some PvP clips. That way y'all get to see some of the sick plays that you're able to make as a Runemaster, including the incredible utility and teleportation.
Against all the evil that hell can conjure, all the wickedness that mankind can produce, we will send unto them only you. Rip and tear until it is done.
Alright guys, hope you enjoyed that. I had a lot more footage, but I really felt like those clips showed you just what the Runemaster is capable of in terms of their maneuverability and damage. Before we wrap up the video, I wanted to go ahead and give you all my opinion on a few pros and cons of the Runemaster. For the pros, they're highly durable, they have extreme mobility with high burst damage, and they have fun and engaging class mechanics. The ability to stack int and have our mana be our health is a huge advantage, because as you see at level 30 with just decent gear, I'm at 2,762 mana and 732 HP. So that means I'm sitting at about 3,500 effective HP, which is much higher than any other class, including the tanks. Even though there is a lot of setup that goes into our damage, the amount that we can put out in a short amount of time is ridiculous. Lastly, the essence system from the Riftblade tree provides really interesting class mechanics that's only going to get better as we level. A few of the cons is that you level slowly by yourself, mainly due to the fact that you cannot solo dungeons, from what I've been able to tell, until really later on. Your skills are also fairly mana intensive, which is really counterintuitive given the fact that our mana is essentially our health. The gameplay is also pretty clunky before 25, given the fact that our Primordial Blast and our Spell Wrath are both like setup abilities that give us buffs, and so you have to just sit still and cast them. And lastly, they don't fully shine until you hit level 28 and get your Riftgate ability. I'll also be posting a link to the weak auras that I created for anyone that wants to use it in the description below. Alright guys, that's all I have for you today. I really appreciate you sticking around. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell down below so you'll be notified when I post my next Conquest of Azeroth class showcase. This is your host Rabbit. Thanks for watching.